The internationalization of INR has begun. This is a great news. RBI yesterday allowed international trades for products and services to be denominated in INR. Earlier, it used to be primarily in USD and Euro. Essentially, now, if I'm exporting or importing services or products from other countries or to other countries, I can actually now pay in INR. This is big news. I thought I should cover this in detail in this video. So what essentially is the significance of this move? I went through Deepak Shenoy's blog, and this particular video is an excerpt from the long blog that he has wonderfully written. Do watch the complete video. Here's a primer from my end. First, the notification itself. As you can see, the world now has shown a lot of interest and support towards INR. And therefore, RBI believes that it is good time to promote growth of global trade with emphasis on exports from India in INR. So it will allow you to essentially do invoicing, payment and settlement of exports and imports in INR. It has generally released a broad framework which is not very descriptive. Maybe there will be more to follow, but this notification is a game changer in my opinion. Let us understand this a little bit more. So what essentially is the current system? Why is it that every transaction is done in the US? Primarily because every bank that is into international transaction settlement has an account in the US. Because USD doesn't allow its money to be kept in any other country other than in US. Therefore, most of the banks end up opening their bank accounts in US, and that's called a Vostro account. So now, how will this transaction in INR primarily work? Let me show you. RBI now has put in place a framework for cross-border transaction, especially for invoicing, payment and settlement, as I mentioned before. So any authorized bank, dealer bank, is now allowed to open Rupee Vostro account. Essentially, if you're a bank outside of India, you can come and now open a bank account in India purely for exports and import settlements. So if I'm an importer or an exporter, I can actually now raise and pay invoices in INR provided the counterparty is okay with it. So now you may say, okay, why will anyone do it? What's the big trigger behind this? Let's understand. Here's a brief background. The war that started in the Eastern Europe led to account freeze in USD for Russia in general. But everyone wanted to buy oil from Russia. It was selling it for cheap. So Russia said, let me set up a Vostro account in India and you can settle the transaction in INR. RBI now said, okay, this is wonderful. And RBI executed the transaction in INR with Russia. Now, RBI then thought, if this payment can happen in INR, why don't I use the same methodology and thereby reducing the USD dependency, US dollar dependency? This is bad thing for US. US now for sure will be very angry with India. But then RBI would have thought was if settlement can happen in Euro, GBP, JPY and Chinese Yen, then why not in INR? After all, India is one of the fastest and largest growing economies of the world. Therefore, I think this would have been the main reason behind this big move. Now you may think RBI may be over-ambitious, there may be no interest at all. But to your surprise, Russia of course is interested. There are also 3 other countries that are very interested in this deal. Let me show you. First is UAE. We have a free trade with them. Second is Venezuela, where we import crude from. And third is basically Iran. So a lot of these crude producing nations are interested in settling in INR. This is also very good for India because India imports a lot of crude from these countries. And the good thing is this interest level will shoot up if RBI does a few things correct. For example, it comes out with clear framework on what do these Vostro accounts do with the surplus rupee. Plus, can countries which are not dealing with India, for example, Bangladesh and let's say Venezuela, also deal in INR? Right now, it is only India versus Venezuela, or India versus Iran, or India versus UAE. But can, let's say, Greece and Turkey deal in right now? If there is some framework and some clarity around that, I think the interest levels which are currently within these three, four countries will actually shoot up to. And finally, the big question, what will happen to INR with this move? Is there any major impact, short term impact, long term impact? Let me cover that. I don't see major movements in the short run because these are things which are very structural in nature. It takes a lot of time to show impact. After all, India's currency also needs to be a lot more free float. Right now, it's not at all free float. So it will take a lot of time before this particular policy comes into some shape and a lot of people start transacting in INR as a currency itself. But the big thing from this is crude now can be dealt in INR, which is, I think, a great move thanks to Russia. And I also believe that this is a good move for importers and exporters because I'm always worried about currency. For example, if I am importing some stuff at USD $1 when it was at 76, by the time the shipment arrived in India, it was already at 80. Just imagine my cost. And then this also affects inflation. We import inflation. And therefore, I think by dealing in INR, importers and exporters will be very happy because there is no currency risk at all. This is a great news for importers and exporters, especially when the currency is depleting. Net to summarize, a big move will take its own sweet time to come into some kind of a shape. It will also take a bit more clarity from RBI side for a lot of other countries before they actually come and open their accounts in India. But I think it's a very good move in the right direction, and I hope to see India's dependency on foreign currency, especially USD, coming down drastically from here. Hope you like this video. Do share if you liked it. Good luck.